It's a property that, let's be really clear on this, that you don't own, that makes you in the region of £40,000 a year.
My foot literally went through the floor in the bathroom because the bathroom floorboards were so wet and rotten. And property can be incredibly passive if you build the business right.
Hi, this is Ant Lyons from Your Property Network magazine. There we go. Some of you might be watching us on our YouTube channel or on Facebook somewhere, one of the Facebook groups. If you don't know about who we are and what we do, we are all about property. So we feature UK property investors and professionals, people who are out there making money in property and following exactly what they do, sharing their stories, sharing their successes, and showing you in the pages of YPN and on the app, on the YPN app, exactly how it's done. And so my guest today he's no stranger to the pages of YPN. Chris Peel, we've had you, and I think you're in the magazine more often than me these days.
Well, I just keep on sending my articles to Jane and she keeps on posting them. So
we love reading them, and YPN is all about ordinary people achieving extraordinary things in property. And today we are talking about an extraordinary thing. We're talking about one of your projects that it's a property that, let's be really clear on this, that you don't own, that makes you in the region of £40,000 a year net profit after all the running costs. Yeah. So one deal, one property you don't own that would more than replace the UK average salary, which I think is around, it changes, but I think it's around £30,000 a year, something like that now. So, okay, so how does it work? What's it all about and how people can do this? We're going to cover it now, but I want to be really clear and say, Chris, you didn't come into property with the kind of silver spoon. You weren't born into the property industry, the property business. You come from a corporate background. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, to start with, I always thought success for me meant climbing the corporate ladder. And so that's what I did. I went to university, I got a degree, and then I got what would be, for most people, kind of the dream job. It was a management consultancy job, working for one of the big four consultancy companies in the world, one of the biggest brands in the world. And I pretty much, when I landed that job, I thought I'd made it. I thought I was just going to climb that corporate ladder and then one day I'd end up at the top, and that would be what success was for me. But getting into that world changed that perception for me pretty quickly. It wasn't everything I thought it would be. There was a lot of kind of repetition, a lot of boring days. And I found myself incredibly unpassionate about the things that I was doing, especially the bigger picture. I'll just give you a quick example. One of the projects I worked on was to help a weapons manufacturer to save money, so that they could make missiles more cost effectively. So every day I'd go home and I'd think about what's my bigger picture commitment to the world here? What's my bigger picture impact? What's my legacy going to be? And my legacy is that I'm making war more cost effective. So it wasn't exactly something I could get passionate about. It wasn't something that, that reducing the cost of killing somebody is not something that really kind of appeals to me or makes me want to get up in the morning and be excited. So that's why I got into property. It was just a move away from that corporate lifestyle that just wasn't working for me.
Okay, and I think probably, I know I've got lots of friends who are in sort of corporate life, and they would all be, if they're watching this, they would all be nodding along saying, you know what, I don't necessarily love what I do. I'm not creating a legacy. The day I leave is the day they kind of forget about me. I'm not creating anything lasting here. And I have lots of friends who are kind of like, same age to me, sort of mid-40s at the moment, who are looking at that going, what else could I do? And when they look at property, virtually all of them say, well, I haven't really got enough money to do this. They think I'm going to need £1 million in the bank, or hundreds of £1,000s in the bank to get this thing up and running. And let's be clear, that wasn't you. You didn't have the massive bank balance.
No, not at all. So the first deal I ever did actually, and was cost me £40, and that made me about £700 a month. And that was purely by being a bit more creative about how we worked with the property, both in terms of the acquisition method and how we got the property in the first place, or rather got access to the property. I never owned it. I just had access and the ability to do stuff with it, and applying very creative application strategies to the back end that maximize the cash flow from it. So from a £40 investment, and that £40, by the way, was me paying for dinner at a JV meeting. I was able to get into a property, or have control of a property, I should say, that went on to make me about £700 a month, and the owner about an extra £1,500 a month.
Okay, brilliant. Now we use these terms of creative strategies, and sometimes people's eyes sort of glaze over at that point because they don't really know what we're talking about. So
Cool.
the point of today's one is to put it into context and talk about a real property. And we're gonna, if you're watching this on YouTube, you should be in a minute seeing pictures of the property, and we're gonna get those showing up around here somewhere. So so let's talk about it. So let's talk about this one deal. So what was it, and how did you find it?
Do you want to know about the first deal or the 18 bedroomer?
Let's talk about the big one that we're talking about today. So the income replacing one, the 40 grand a year from
Yeah,
one
cool.
property you don't own.
Okay, so I think it's important to paint a bit of context into this as well. This wasn't my first deal. This was probably my 70th or 80th deal that I ever did. I think in total now we've done about 120 property deals. So this was kind of about 60% of the way through our growth journey to get to where we are now. So I'd already got some relationships with estate agents. I'd already done some deals in the town where this property was, and I'd already developed a bit of a name for ourselves. So this particular project was off market. It never made it to Rightmove. And it was purely through a contact, an estate agent that we already knew. And she called me up and she said, I've got this property. It's big. It's got a lot of potential. I think you could do a great job with it. And I said, okay, cool. When can I see it? And she said, well, we booked a date. I was like, great. So what's the address? I'll meet you there. And she said, no. Come to the office first. And I was like, okay, fine. I'll come to the office. And so I went to the office, dutifully met her at her office. And she said, now, before I take you around there, I just want to set your expectations, okay? Because it's got some great potential, this place. Now, Ant, you know as well as I do that potential means something in the property world. What does potential mean?
Potential normally means that you wipe your feet on the way out of the property.
Exactly right. So this place, you had to wipe your feet on the way out and the way in, because I turned up with my expectations thoroughly kind of set down here somewhere, and was greeted. The first thing that greeted me at this property was a human poo on the front doorstep and some used needles scattered around the front door. So you got a good first impression of the place. And so it didn't get any better when we went inside. It was, some of the room, it was like, so this property is 3 5-bedroom flats, one on top of the other. So it's like a 4-story building, retail unit on the ground floor, flat. Now we didn't have access to the retail unit, but we had the 3 flats. So we went into the first flat and opened one of the bedroom doors, and the smell of vomit like smacked you in the face. And it was like, oh my goodness, wow. Is it going to get any worse or is it getting better? And it didn't get any better, really. We went into the other bedrooms, and there was like urine stains all over all the mattresses. The furniture was like falling apart. The floors were stained.
What had it been used for? Why was it in this state then?
Yeah, so it was previously the owner had rented these 3 flats out to a charity that housed people struggling with drug addiction. And these people, clearly by the evidence around in the flats, hadn't been coping too well with that struggle, and were still using. There was like heroin needles outside the front door. There were some more in the flat, and I don't think a maintenance team had been into that house for well over a year. These people had taken their frustrations out with the keys onto the plasterwork. My foot literally went through the floor in the bathroom because the bathroom floorboards were so wet and rotten. And it was just like that throughout. I mean, everything, we looked at it and we were like, I mean, it's definitely got potential. It's huge. We could turn this into 18 bedrooms here, as well as having massive kitchens and plenty of bathroom space in all the flats as well. But
the owners have been renting it to the charity.
Yeah.
They'd had it presumably on a long-term sort of commercial lease, and at some point said, you know what, this just isn't working, and handed the keys back. And at which point they're left with these 3 flats, which are in a state where very few people are going to want to take them on, a state where they can't just rent them out. So.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's why it never hit Rightmove, because it needed somebody that could come along and do something and kind of see past the mess. So we looked at it, we went away, we figured out what we could afford to offer, and we came back with an offer that included a big refurbishment project at our expense.
Okay, so I mean, let's talk about let's talk about structuring the agreement and the refurb. So I don't know which ones we should talk about first. Maybe how you struck the deal and what was going to happen, because I know initially they were looking for more money than you were
Mm.
looking to pay. And
Yeah,
that's a familiar story to all of us.
Yeah, sure, exactly right. Everyone wants more than it's worth, or it's always worth more to the seller than it is to the buyer. So they were looking for about 5.5 grand in rent for these 3 flats, which, I mean, even if they were done up to a really nice standard, it's not worth that much. And when we factor in the fact that we're dealing with something that needs a lot of money spending on it, it's definitely not worth that much. But the owner had an expectation, and they had that expectation because that's what they'd been getting from the charity. So they wanted 5.5 grand for the 3 flats because that's what they'd been receiving. So when we came back with our offer of £3,000 a month instead of 5.5 grand, but with a combined offer of the fact that we will refurbish it and keep it to a much better standard than your previous tenant, unsurprisingly, the landlord just kind of shot us down. He was like, no, it's nowhere near where it needs to be. I can get way more than that. There's loads of potential here. And I was like, yeah, there is loads of potential there. But that's all it is at the moment. It's potential. Okay. Unless you can find someone willing to spend literally tens of thousands of pounds on this place, you're not going to get a tenant. It probably needs condemning right now. No one's going to live there. But he stuck to his guns, we stuck to ours, and we kind of parted ways and we just left it there. And it was only after it sat there empty for another kind of couple of weeks that we were reapproached by the agent and said, look, you still got that property empty. Could you maybe consider upping your budget a little bit? To which I kind of suggested that we all sit down and have a conversation. So we met for coffee, and it was at that conversation that we really agreed the deal, where we were able to kind of actually sit down, talk to the guy, speak to him about his problems, understand where he was trying to come from, and align his expectations with the solution that we had to offer. And that's kind of key to any negotiation, is if you want to be able to get concessions, or you want to be able to move the conversation forward, you've got to be able to get inside the head of the other person. And the way we do that is just by asking open questions. So I might say to you, Ant, like, let's say you were the owner, I might say, well, look, Ant, tell me what was great about the previous tenancy. Oh, they paid a premium, or, I didn't have to worry about it. Okay, and tell me what didn't work about the previous tenancy. Oh, well, they've trashed it. Okay, and what's important to you in a tenant, Ant? Oh, well, I want someone who looks after the place, who always pays their rent on time. Is that great? Well, look, this is what we can offer you. If you were to work with us, the property gets refurbished, it gets put into a great standard, and then we get our team of professional tradespeople and cleaners to keep it in that great standard. Now, I understand that you were looking for 5.5 grand, but let's be honest, the reason they paid you 5.5 grand, that was damages that they were paying you there. That wasn't a realistic market rent. They were paying you compensation for the fact that they were going to trash your apartment, and they knew it. So that's why our offer is so much lower. So we have a commercial element to our offer. We have to make money on it as well, but we want it to be a win-win. So we're offering long-term, we're offering 0 voids for the next 5 years. We're offering to fully refurbish the flat. And more importantly, we're offering to refurbish this flat and keep it to a great standard, so that you don't have to worry about, is the next time you go round, is there going to be needles outside the front door? Is there going to be, is your foot going to go through the floor in the bathroom? You don't need to worry about that stuff, because we can guarantee it won't happen, because you'll be working with us, not your previous clients. So it was really to get the concessions that we needed and to get the deal moving forward. It was much more about getting inside the guy's head, understanding what the priorities were, and then using that information to frame our offer in a way that makes it sound really good, because it's still almost half what he's looking for. We did make a concession on the rent, but we went to 3,100, not 5.5 grand. Okay, so we came up by 100 quid a month, which is fairly minor. I think looking back, I think I could have stuck at 3 grand and got the deal done, but we did make that small concession, and it's worked out really well since.
Yeah, okay, so let's talk about the refurb, because you needed some money spent on it. I'm guessing you managed to refurb it fairly smartly and keep the cost to a minimum, but get the maximum effect from it. So how much did that cost, and what did briefly, not everything, but what works did you undertake?
Yeah, sure. So we were all in for about 40k. Now that includes the deposit that we paid, the first month's rent, and the actual refurb cost, and furnishing it and decorations and stuff. So what did we do? We ripped out all the carpets because they were, like, some vomit had got soaked into them and we just couldn't get the smell out. We got rid of all the furniture, basically anything soft in the place just went. We replastered and repainted the walls where required. We repainted the whole place top to bottom. new flooring in the kitchen, bathroom, new floorboards in the bathroom, new shower unit in one of the bathrooms because it was a bit broken as well. New doors on the kitchen cabinets. The carcasses were okay, but the doors were knackered. And then furniture throughout.
Okay, brilliant. And so £40,000 is going to be a lot of people watching this go, well, that's great. Chris had 40 grand to do it with. Not quite the case, was it? It's not exactly how you did it.
No, I didn't actually use any of my money on this deal. So 100% of that funding. Well, first of all, actually, because of the way we structured the deal, although it cost us £40,000, the actual cost was more like 26 because we negotiated a period of rent free as well. So we had like the first, I think it's 3 months rent free. So we pay for the first month, so he's got the money in his account, and then we don't pay rent for the next 3 months. So it kind of brings down our net investment. But we still had to spend 40 grand up front, even though we got quite a bit of it back straight away in zero rent. So to do that, we worked with investors, as we do in pretty much, in fact, I'm going to go and say basically all of our deals. I do buy my own houses now because I have to invest my profits somewhere, but it's for the majority of deals, we use investor finance. And that is in the form of straight loans. So we have various different ways that we work with investors. The first is either just a straight loan where they loan us money for a specific project and we pay them money back from the profits of that project plus interest, and that interest is agreed up front. Or we have investor loan accounts where someone will go to us and say, right, I've got 70K, I just want to give it to you. You invest it on which projects you think are the right projects, and you pay me percentages on each one. And it all goes back to the investor loan account, which is obviously an FCA regulated project, so it's a bit more complex. Or there's the whole JV where you give them a split of the profits and they become your business partner. We don't tend to do too much of that because I have a lot, just because of the amount of projects we've done, we tend to get quite a lot of offers of loan finance. So we don't need to go giving away chunks of the pie, but certainly when you're starting, I gave away more than 50% of my first deal. I took 30% of the profit from my first one and let the owner keep the other 70. And that's it's concessions you make when you've got less experience. And I think that's good to be able to make those concessions because you'll get more deals done.
Okay, fab. So let's talk about the work's been done. Looking at some pictures at the moment, it's a real transformation of what it looked like before to after, and smart spending on that budget as well, not overspending. It's way too easy to spend too much money. So who's your end tenant? Who's living there? And can you paint a picture of the rent you pay, the bills, and the income that's coming in, so everyone can understand? We've done a great job. You've done a great, amazing job of painting how the deal was done. Let's look at the results of it and what it puts in the bank each month.
Cool. So it's actually different now than when I originally wrote this article for YPN. So we found a way of boosting that value a little bit more as well. So traditionally, when we first launched the place, we got a team of contractors to take on 2 of the flats. So instantly 12 rooms were filled. And then we filled the top floor flat. So floor 3 was filled just like traditional HMO tenants. Now, following that model, with contractors in the top 2 flats, the first floor and the second floor, and then traditional tenants in the top one, we were getting an average of about £475 per room, with 18 rooms. So we were making £8,730. Then we had to pay our rent for the place, which was £3,100. And then we had to pay our bills, which worked out at about £500 a flat, so £1,500 in total. So we were left with that model of profits of just over £4,000 a month. I think it's like £4,100 pounds a month.
Wow, amazing. I mean, from a property you don't own, nearly 50,000 a year to do it. And can I ask, how much time does it take up sort of managing now? Now it's sort of part of the portfolio. How much time would you allocate to sort of managing that one property?
Yeah, cool. So obviously, again, like this property is an interesting one because it's changed use a couple of times. So once those contractors moved out, we went down the traditional tenants route for the first 2 flats as well. And then I'd say the workload increased a little bit because the contractors is basically no work because they were just in and out. They just treated it like a base, and that was great. Then we got a bit more workload when it was 18 separate tenants that we had to manage. And then we have, again, switched the first 2 flats into contractor flats. And now we've got contractors back in there at some pretty, like, really good rates, better than we had the first time around. So we're probably making more like 4,500 a month profit on that one. But in terms of management time, it really depends on the application strategy. So if you have 18 individual tenants, then obviously you've got 18 tenancies, 18 deposits, 18 rents to make sure that they get paid. Versus if you have obviously one flat that you're running as almost like a service department, but for the contractor niche, which is where I focus most of my effort these days. Then you only have one rent to pay, and it's a company that's liable, not a person. So it becomes much more B2B, which is obviously easier to manage. But even with 18 people, I mean, I don't want to paint a bad picture, because even with 18 people, like, the workload is not that great. Like, in terms of managing those tenants, because it's recently refurbished, we don't really get people moving out very often. So we don't have to do tons of viewings. Now, obviously, when we did want to find some tenants originally, there was a workload to do there, because there's 18 rooms to fill. Now, the way we did it was we tried to do block viewings. Okay, so we advertised on Facebook, paid ads, we advertised on Spare Room, Open Rent, Gumtree, Facebook Marketplace, and we had all these different sources of leads. And then we would have like predefined viewing slots. So we'd book everyone in so that multiple people would be showing up at the same time. And it generates a bit of competition, and it leverages our time better, because instead of going 10 separate times to do 10 separate viewings, we go maybe 2 times to do 10 viewings. So we found that the rooms rented out quicker, and actually it wasn't as time intensive as it would have been if we were trying to do individual viewings for individual people.
Okay, well, Chris, I think you've done an amazing job of actually painting a picture of exactly how this deal worked, kind of end to end, and we squeezed it into kind of 10 minutes or so. We did the sort of full interview with you on this project and a number of others in the pages of YPN. So if anyone does subscribe to Your Property Network, they can either read that in the hard copy of the magazine or in the YPN app, which you have free access to. We are very much about ordinary people achieving extraordinary things in property. And I don't know if you would agree with this. I think that anybody can do this, but it does take, it's not necessarily rocket science. It's not necessarily really complicated, but it takes a huge amount of sort of tenacity and determination, and the willingness to do it and to sacrifice time sometimes, particularly if you're in that corporate life, when you're that corporate job, other responsibilities. I don't know if you'd echo that anybody can do it if they really want to do it.
Yeah, I do echo that. I think nowhere near enough emphasis generally in property is placed on the business side of things. Talks about individual property deals, but running a property business is different to running a property deal. And property can be incredibly passive if you build the business right. And that's the key, is making sure that you're investing in software and teams as you grow to extract you out of the process.
Okay, so look, if you're watching this on YouTube or wherever you're watching this on Facebook, and you think, what, I'm interested in taking the next step in property, we always think a great place to start is actually with our magazine. We're bound to say it, but it is a bit of a no-brainer. You can get your first copy of Your Property Network completely free of charge. If you like it, 30 days later, it's £7.95 a month, for less than the cost of 2 cups of coffee. We send your first magazine out for free. You get instant access to the YPN app, where you can read, I think we've got 2 years worth of back editions on there, so you can read all of those. We record many of the interviews that we do. So like the interviews that we do with you, Chris, we record either the audio or the video on there, so they get loaded onto the app as well. And as well as the kind of real UK investors like you, we've got our kind of team of, I guess, the sort of professionals at the other end. So my property tax accountant writes in the magazine, my planning consultant, we have people who write about tenant legislation and law and all those kind of things, and my finance broker, they're all in there as well. So if that's something you're interested in, you can go to yourpropertynetwork.co.uk/subscribe, yourpropertynetwork.co.uk/subscribe. There's probably a button to click on which will take you there. If you're not ready to subscribe, you can go to the website, and we've got different webinars that you can just join for free, register for, and there's me talking about my own property projects. We talk about how to find deals, how to finance them, all those kind of things. So there's loads of resources on there as well. So Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. As always, I think you're a real inspiration to many people out there who are in that corporate rat race, always running to sort of, stay ahead of the treadmill. So it's, you've built an amazing property business. I think one of the figures you like to say is you hit a certain amount of turnover within a certain time frame? Perhaps you can just refresh my memory on that.
Yeah, it was. We hit 7 figures within 3 years. So I think the first year we hit 40,000. Second year was 600,000, and third year was 1.2 million.
Okay, amazing. And in that kind of time frame as well, and from a standing start with just a few £1,000s to invest, so you really are testimony to what can be achieved if people have got the sort of drive and determination to do it. So it's been a pleasure talking to you today.
Thanks,
and we'll look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll speak to you again very soon. Take care, Ant.